Hello, everyone. Thank you for being patient with us. Thank you, everyone. We have had little technical issues, so really appreciate your patience there. We are operating in an exciting hybrid format, so I'm really happy to welcome all of you here in person at the beautiful Accenture Industrial Design Center, and of course, those of you who are now tuning in online for the official launch of the Circular Electronics Design Guide. So I am Ralitza Naydenova, the Communications and Operations Lead at the Circular Electronics Partnership. We're actually the initiative which started the project back in January with the great leadership of Accenture and, of course, in partnership with the Circular Design Forum. If we can move to the next slide. And to the one afterwards. Thank you. So for those of you who don't know about CEP, we're an industry platform that consists of 6 founding partners. So those are global NGOs that work with businesses on sustainability solutions, and 20+ private sector members across the value chain, which you can see on the slide here. We're hosted by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and we've been operating since 2021 with the ambition to enable companies in the sector to transition to circularity by fostering cross-industry collaboration and coordinated collective action. In a nutshell, our work is guided by the Circular Electronics Roadmap, which we can see in a second. What we do is that we leverage the expertise of our member companies and the unique strengths of each of our partners, thank you, to essentially develop scalable solutions together with the industry and enable coordination, implementation, and monitoring of activities that help us address these challenges on the roadmap. The Circular Electronics Roadmap, which we can see in the next slide, which now have the power to change. Thank you. This Circular Electronics Roadmap underpins all the activities we run on the platform, and it was developed by the industry to capture the key challenges that the sector faces when trying to transition to circularity. It's extremely comprehensive, and I'll dive in a second in what it entails. But the key here is that it is structured across 6 pathways, so it offers a very holistic approach that follows the life cycle stages of an electronic product. Those 6 pathways go from design for circularity to driving demand for circular products and services, scaling responsible business models, increasing the official collection rate, aggregating for reuse and recycling, and last but not least, scaling secondary material markets. Under each of these 6 pathways are nested 40 actions, which are either collective actions, company actions, or wider stakeholder asks. And of course, I invite you to dive into full detail on what those actions entail by scanning the QR code or just exploring the CEP website, where the design guide that we're launching today and other really interesting resources can also be found. The Circular Electronics Design Guide is a result of really exciting collaboration, which shows not only the value of cross-industry knowledge exchange, but also the power of design as a leverage to transform the industry. The guide more specifically addresses action number 3 in pathway 1 on design, and this action calls the community to develop and roll out educational programs and tools on circular design. So we really hope that this guide will be a daily companion for designers, product developers, but also everyone else who is craving those industry-specific insights and tools. As the guide also highlights, and the roadmap as well, the design is not just about the technical solutions. It's much more complex, as you all are very well aware. It involves things like organizational culture and processes, policies, consumer behavior, data schemes, and all other elements that make circular products possible. An important aspect of design is also collaboration. We're all here today thanks to your commitment to being in a collaborative spirit and exchanging knowledge with each other. And I hope that collaboration can happen both in your teams and across teams, inside your organizations, across the value chain with other companies in the sector, but also with other sectors of society, as policymakers, consumers, and others play an equally important part in making this all possible. So the guide we're going to explore today is also an invitation for all those stakeholders who want to see more circular electronics to really dive into the guide and get inspired and equipped to be the agents of change. Now, in a second, I'll pass it on to Wytse Kaastra from Accenture, who is the Sustainability Services Lead for the EMEA region, which is very exciting to have him here with us today. But before I do that, I really want to sincerely thank the Accenture team for the tremendous effort that went into developing this guide. Your passion, your dedication, and hard work to capture the brilliant insights of people in this room and online, and to put this into a beautifully looking and incredibly informative guide that we'll dive into a second is truly appreciated. So thank you. Wytse, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to welcome you here in our Eindhoven office, and it's an honor to represent Accenture here in front of you. So I'll keep it super short because I'm quite mindful that you want to hear about the circularity guide and not so much about a lot of other discussions. So as said, I'm leading sustainability services in the EMEA region for Accenture. It's a business we set up 3 years ago. We were always a little bit in a niche area. We did some strategy work, but we felt as an organization and our CEO that this is the decade that sustainability goes at scale, goes mainstream. And I have the honor to do that for my organization in EMEA. And that's also the region where at the moment we see most traction. Having said that, the traction is everywhere. But we have some challenges, and perhaps it's good to discuss that a little bit. So just wanted to share some data points with you from recent studies and recent analysis we've done, that at the top of the house, our clients, the CEOs of our clients, are all having sustainability high on their radar, and they believe, especially in Europe, a little bit less elsewhere, but they believe it's their responsibility to make the change. And what we also observe in some areas like Europe, that we have quite some aggressive targets at the boardroom, driven by the WEF discussions, WBCSD discussions with local politicians, international politicians. I mean, everybody has been very bold over the past years, especially after the Paris Agreement in 2015. And we observe also that those that are really implementing these measures are typically having higher valuations. Are they earning more money today? Not sure, but the valuation in terms of their shares are typically higher. So that's also why we see a lot of PE firms being super eager on this topic. But on the same time, we see that many clients are not on track compared to their plans. So what we observe as Accenture is quite of a disconnect between what the top of the house, the CEOs, the boardrooms are putting out as targets and what's actually happening on the floor. Because on the floor, the rubber hits the road, right? It's yes, we want all to become more sustainable, but the costs are higher. How am I gonna recover from that? And my price will be higher than competition, or I'm eating into my margin. Or I need my suppliers to come with me to make this change. And as an individual company, it's really hard to make the change. And the past couple of years, when I took the role 3 years ago, I think we were on the top of the hype cycle, at least here in Europe. We wanted to save the planet, businesses, politicians, everybody. And the past 2 years, I observed a bit of a backlash in the sense that business coming a little bit back to reality in terms of, can we afford it? Our margins are under pressure, we need to survive. There's a bit of a crisis here and there, not a massive crisis, but a bit of this uncomfortable feeling. So we have seen that some companies are trimming back their achievements. And some people say, well, that's really worrying. I tend to be a positive-minded person, and I think we get into maturity and scale. So CEOs these days, they step into their roles and they say, look, if there is a target, I want to reach it. I don't like targets that I can't reach. So perhaps we need to be a bit more realistic, but then execute at scale on it. So my expectation, my hope, but it's more than hope, my belief, is that we went down this hype curve. We are going through the tipping points, and that the tipping points are different by industry, by technology, and we are starting to scale up, and we're going to see the transformation. So why is Accenture collaborating on this topic? Because sustainability is just not the next technology, the next topic. This requires a fundamental change of how businesses are run, how products are made, how supply chains are organized. So these are systemic changes. And the energy transition is closely related to the material transition, is closely related to the food and agricultural transition. There are geopolitical tensions in the world when it comes to natural resources, critical earth and minerals. No single company, no single government can change it. So we need the power of coalitions. We need the power of collaboration to make it help. And the WBCSD and the CEP are exactly organizations and initiatives that work on this pre-competitive collaboration. And for me, that's a key word, pre-competitive collaboration. Because that's exactly, I think, what the topic is here today, to say, let's bundle best practices, let's bundle standards, let's agree on that, and then we will compete one day in the retail stores or manufacturing. But this whole process before is super important to do it together, because one company cannot set the standards for the others. You need to agree on that collectively. So that's also why I like this focus on electronic today, because when we talk about circularity, for me it's a bit like cloud, digital, energy transition. It's so high level, so you need to bring it down to specific industry segments, and probably within that even to more specific topics, because then it becomes tangible and you can act on it. And this is all about activation, because all the high-level discussions, we have done that the past 10 years. So everything now is about activation, scaling, and creating profitable growth. If we have those things right, it's going to start to fly. So that's why we help. That's why we are so passionate to work with you, to create this competitive collaboration, sharing expertise, connecting the global network, and work on innovative solutions. And this is really my final slide, that this is a little bit of a small hidden secret of Accenture, this office of industrial design. And I'm promoting it massively with our clients, but also even internally in Accenture. We're a business of 750,000 people, and not everybody knows this. But my speech is always the same. I say, look, at the moment everybody's focused on reporting disclosures of ESG measurement, and companies try to, as an enterprise, to become more sustainable. They're moving into green energy, they're moving away from fossil fuels, but fundamentally the business is still operating like it was. And many industries need to really start to change not only the enterprise, but the products of the enterprise. So the real change will happen at product level. And if you want to change at product level, you need to change the fundamental design of these products, whether it's in consumer electronics or in food or in whatever other industry. And that's exactly the topic of today. So design is mission critical, rethinking the materials, rethinking the ecosystem. The customer engagement is often neglected. I mean, our customer people are a bit frustrated because they say it's very much technology push, but if selling sustainability to a consumer is very difficult. Typically in Europe, 5% of the people are inclined to buy sustainable products. 95% of the others want a better, cooler, faster, cheaper, more affordable solution. So these are the buyer values that you need to tap into. And if you just try to sell sustainability, it is a hard sell. So with that, I think I will end my, my little introduction here and hand over to the next speaker, Francesco.
Does the mic work? Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot to Rally and to Wytse for the amazing introductions. My name is Francesco Fazio. I'm a senior sustainable design engineer at Accenture Industrial Design, and I'm also one of the co-organizers of the Circular Design Forum. For me, it's a very special moment today. It's a great privilege and honor to be the one presenting this amazing work that was developed by a great team, a huge team, definitely not just me. And at the same time, a huge responsibility, because so much work and effort went into it that I was really struggling to understand how do I talk about this gigantic guide that now counts 600 pages in just 30 minutes, and everybody was like, oh, you have to mention that, you have to mention that. So I hope I'll do my best and I'll do it justice. But before diving into the guide itself, I would like to mention what I believe this guide meant for the Circular Design Forum. For those that don't know what the Circular Design Forum is, for instance, the people joining through the live broadcast, the forum is a collaborative initiative, a cross-company knowledge-sharing initiative. Many of the people part of the forum are actually here today as well. It's an initiative that now counts 180 experts from 35 different organizations. The people that perhaps joined it at the start now are looking around and being like, where are all these people coming from? An important thing to know about the forum is it's not a public initiative. It's a closed-door initiative. And although this setup proved to bring a lot of value in maintaining a very high quality of the insights and the knowledge shared and creating this feeling of community like the one that we see today. Today we are also celebrating the 2 years anniversary of the forum. It always put a bit the limit on how much we share of this amazing knowledge that we are bringing together with all of you, with all the people part of it, with the public. So I would really like to thank the CEP for having given the opportunity to many CDF members to join in the work group and creating this guide together, because I really think that the guide was what the CDF was looking for to share beyond just, again, the four walls of the forum itself. So I will briefly mention a few numbers that hopefully are going to give you an idea of how massive this work has been. 25 organizations joined the work group that co-developed together this guide, of which many of them are here today. So thank you very much. I couldn't think of a better way to release this guide. 60 experts from these 25 organizations were actively involved in developing the guide through interviews, focus groups, surveys. The result is a very big document, a 600 pages document, where we really try to capture and take full advantage of this great opportunity that we were given of really getting in touch with all these companies and experts and capturing everything in something that could be shared with everybody. All of this done in just 9 months. We met with many of you around mid-February to kick off this work, and we are here end of October officially releasing this final document. I still remember many of you, the first time we talked about this work, so many people were mentioning 3 things. This is amazing, this is massive, and you are completely crazy. And I can definitely say that all 3 points were right, in particular the crazy part, because I think when we started this, we knew that it would have been a very ambitious project, but I think that we still undermined the actual scale of it. So I would also like to take a moment to really thank the core team that was behind this work, because I personally believe that we would not have a guide like the one that we have today if it would have been on a different topic. I think there have been a lot of moments where many of us were like, this is impossible, we cannot make it happen in this time, in this time frame. It was really big, but I feel that for many of us, this topic is not just a 9-to-5 job, right? It's really a bit what we feel is our role, our mission in life, and I think that this really helped to push through, and I think many of us had to sacrifice a lot of work-time balance, work-life balance throughout the project, but I really think that that was a key ingredient to really make this happen. So I would really like to thank the user research team that set up and organized all the interviews with the many of you that contributed to the guide, that capture all the insights, the massive amount of insights from all the different experts, the content team that transform all this huge amount of knowledge and information into the actual guide, the project management team that made sure we had something for you to see today, and the visual design team that, of course, transform this very long, at some point, to Word document into the amazing guides that we have today. Thank you very much. So I remember that at first, when we started to ideate about this guide and what we were trying to achieve, we really pondered on the meaning of mastering circular design. What does it mean, mastering circular design? What are we trying to achieve with this guide that is different compared to all other guides that are already out there, right? There is already so much information around this topic. There are so many great guides out there. What are we really trying to achieve that can bring something new to the discussion? And for many of us, mastering circular design means something very specific that is going really wide. There are so many different things that we at least need to be aware of, if not really knowing in detail, to be able to correctly implement circular design. Things from regulations to materials, logistics, life cycle assessment, user research, business cases, and way more. And at the same time, what we also really believe is that if we are just aware of all these different expertise areas, but just at a very superficial level, and we don't really deep dive into any of them, that doesn't really allow us to bring any real change, to really implement anything real, any real circular design solution between our businesses and companies. So there is this second dimension of mastering circular design that is going deep, and this is where the challenge comes, because when you want to go wide and deep, then all of a sudden it becomes something very hard to tackle. It's something that also for me personally, but I know that for many people is something really overwhelming. I spend quite some time on this topic by now, but still for me it's very overwhelming sometimes to keep up with all the new things that you have to constantly know, new regulations, new expertise areas that you never had to deal before, and then all of a sudden as a product designer you have to know about logistics and business cases and all these other things. And we also definitely see it in people that are coming as new to this topic, right? They're like, from where do I start? And sometimes I don't even know where to tell them where to start, right? Because there is so much to be aware of. So this is exactly what we put ourselves as a goal for this guide, and what we really hope that this guide is going to help with. It's a guide that goes both wide but also deep, and a guide that helps navigating this complexity of this topic. Hopefully something that can help also people that are now approaching this topic to feel less overwhelmed and knowing how to navigate throughout the complexity of circularity. But we know that if we wanted to go so wide and at the same time so deep, we definitely couldn't do it alone. We had to team up with a lot of different experts, people from very different backgrounds and expertise areas, coming from different organizations, to really capture this collective knowledge in one document. So we leveraged the great momentum and communities that both CEP and CDF have been nourishing in the past few years, and we reached out to the companies and expert part of either organization, and we proposed them, hey, let's team up and write this guide together. And a guide focused on a specific industry, the electronics industry, because of course that's the core focus of the CEP, but it's also the industry from where many CDF members are from. I still remember that the first time that we approached many experts, we often received this question that initially I was not expecting, but of course made complete sense. Many people were wondering, like, are you sure am I the right person to help you writing a guide on circular design? Because I don't have a traditional design background, I don't have the word designer in my title. But if not, people like Adam, that I think is also here today, that has been promoting completely new circular value propositions on the topic of consumer repair, then who can tell us how to design circular value proposition? If not Bogusha, that is also here today, that spearheaded designing the entire refurbishment system for Versuni, then who can tell us about how to design for refurbishment? If not Lendor Jan, that has been leading the development of eco-design framework frameworks at Philips for decades, then who can tell us about how to create circular design frameworks? So this kind of brought us to one of the key messages that we really try to capture in this document and we really want to promote with it, and that is that circular design and designers go way beyond the traditional definition of design and designers. A very nice definition that I kind of stole from Caroline through one of the interaction we had and that we also capture in the guide, is a much more inclusive definition of designer. That is a person who imagines how something could be made and makes plan for it. And we really believe that this more inclusive definition not only better describes what design and designer in the circular context is, but is also a definition that allows us to bring together this amazing group of experts. Again, a huge group. We didn't expect to receive so much support. At some point, it was also overwhelming because then we felt the pressure that we really had to make sure we would leverage the knowledge that all these people are bringing together. But this group is really composed by people with extremely different background and expertise areas, from people with deep knowledge in LCA, people with deep knowledge in data collection schemes, operations and logistics, and then, of course, also traditional product design and, of course, also product engineering. And I would like again to take a moment to thank the entire work group that has been helping us with this guide. Yes. So another very important thing to know as a sort of introduction before I swear I'm going to get to the guide at some point today, is that we really try to focus on one specific thing, and that was capturing actionable insights. What we mean with actionable insights is insights that can directly lead to action. We tried not to capture just generic consideration on the topic of circularity, which we believe are also already well captured in a lot of documentation out there. We really try to capture more in-depth and actionable anecdotes from experts that told us the different things that they tried, that they learned from, and that sometimes work, sometimes they didn't work in their specific company and context. And we had this huge group of experts, right? So we had also to understand how to structure and how to collect this data. So we ran a lot of different one-to-one interviews, but also surveys with the entire work group and also many focus groups. Before diving into the guide itself, I would like to make a disclaimer that you're also going to find in the guide. I would really like you not to look at this document as a scientific publication. We didn't run an extensive literature research behind it. You're not going to find a reference section at the end of it. It's a guide that documents the trials and errors and experiences and best practices from practitioners for practitioners. So this is really based oftentimes on personal opinions, personal beliefs, personal experiences that sometimes might be the right fit also for you and your company and your context, but sometimes they might not. Because what we also learn in all this process is that there is not one rule that fits all. Every time is about experimenting and figuring out what actually works for a specific context. But what is circular design? What is at least the meaning that we gave to circular design in this guide? And as you might already got the feeling, it's a very wide definition of circular design that we used in this guide. Traditional definition of circular design already states that circular design goes way beyond product. It's also about designing services and systems. In this guide, we would also like to push this definition even beyond that by considering also what we call the enabling foundation. This is about designing those enabling conditions that allow for an organization-wide shift towards circularity. And what we tried to do was to capture these different natures of circular design and the different roles that circular design can play at different levels in what we call the circular innovation process, where we try to represent four main phases where we see the implementation in different ways and natures of circular design. So starting from enable, that is about designing the conditions to enable an organization-wide shift, for instance, by designing a circular culture, a circular governance, or a circular data schemes. frame, the phase that is about establishing a clear, a common understanding of circularity throughout an entire organization to make sure that all the different businesses, all different people, single people working for a company are working towards the same goal. For instance, through reference frameworks, metrics, KPIs, and targets. Then we have the plan phase that is about exploring new value propositions, new circular value proposition through contextual research that involves a lot of things like life cycle assessment, user insights. And after we create this new value proposition, we also need to derive implementation plan. How do we move from where we are today, from the linear value proposition to the circular one? Roadmaps that can really allow us to think a bit more long-term rather than just what we have to put on the market next year. And finally, the implement phase, that is the one that people most traditionally associate with circular design, that is about executing this value proposition, both at the product design level, but also operations design. Operation design, we really felt, was a topic that was often overlooked when talking about circular design, but also user engagement and communications design. When we develop circular value proposition, oftentimes we are asking users to use a solution in a very different way compared to how they always did. And there is a huge importance in making sure that we are engaging with them in the right way to ensure adoption of new solutions, a new way of using products. But how to capture this complexity? Already on those slides, I mentioned so many different topics, and each of them, if you go deep, you open each of them a Pandora box. Our solution was a map to create a visual representation of this process and to use it to navigate the complexity of circular design. And this brings us to the blueprint. The blueprint, again, here you can recognize the 4 main phases of the circular innovation process, from enable, frame, plan, and implement. And then sub-phases, some blocks that represents the major elements of each of these phases. But the way we looked at this map is as if these are blocks, these are buildings that you can open a small door and then you can start walking down the stairs and you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into each of these blocks and really getting into the nitty-gritty of how do I design a new circular value proposition? How do I design for repair? How do I design a circular framework? And if you do that, if you open up those boxes, you get to a deeper level of complexity, where here you can see it's the level 2 blueprint where we exploded each of these blocks and we really try to document best practices and to really be operational, actionable. So step by steps, what are best practices to, again, design a circular value proposition, design for repair, design for refurbishment, recycling, and a lot of other things. So we were preparing a lot of slides to show you what you are going to find in the guide, but then we thought that maybe the best way to do it was actually to show you the guide itself and to navigate through it. And in that way, we can also share maybe some important information that can really help you to navigate and get familiar with the document as well. So I'll now move to the demo. What can go wrong? We are live on many different channels. Yes, so as you probably already seen a bit everywhere, this is the cover of the guide. As mentioned, this guide is really big, right? And we already discussed with so many people, like, now we capture this content, how do we make it accessible? How do we make sure that people don't open this document and they're like, wow, this is too big, I'm not even gonna spend time in reading it. The way we would like you to look at this guide is as a knowledge bank that is always there for you, and that you can selectively read depending on what you would like to learn about in a specific moment in time. So of course you can read all the 600 pages at once. You are definitely welcome to do it. I definitely recommend it. But we understand that not everybody's gonna do it. So what we tried to do was to integrate a sort of level of interactivity in the document. This is just a PDF that you're going to be able to download. So we kind of push the boundaries of what we can do with a PDF. So you're probably going to experience some glitching and some bugs sometimes, but we think that is already good first iterations of this map that we definitely want to improve over time. So before diving into the content, I'm briefly going to show you some elements that I think are really going to be handy to know about to help in navigating the document. So as you might have already seen on any page of the guide, you're always going to find this top button that is always going to bring you back to the main table of content. This table is going to give you access to the main sections of the guide. Here you're going to find the more introductory chapters that are going to describe also a lot of information that I briefly mentioned today. For instance, the great company and experts behind this work and how this work came to life. A very interesting section that I would definitely recommend to start from is the executive summary, because there we really try to capture in a concise way describe the content that you're going to find in each section of the document. So it's a good way to get familiarized with the guide and understand from where you would like to start. Another very interesting thing that already some people mentioned today, they saw and they really appreciate, is in the introduction chapters, you are going to find a reading guide that is going to tell you which parts of the guide might be more relevant for you depending on your role. At the same time, I would also strongly encourage you to read parts that are not directly connected to your role. Let's say I'm a senior sustainable manager and I'm asked to create a circular design framework for an entire company. For me, there is a huge value in learning about the nitty-gritty of refurbishment implementation, because then I can really learn about the challenges, the opportunities, some of the solutions that experts already investigated and explored, and then use it to inform my overall framework and making sure that it really fits well with what I'm trying to achieve. The opposite scenario, let's say I'm a mechanical engineer. I've been trying to push for repairability for years, and I always receive a huge pushback, and I always struggle to understand why it's so difficult to implement some change. For me, there is a lot of value in learning about the enabling foundation, because probably that one is not fully mature in my company yet. The main section is the content itself. We split this guide in two main parts. Part one is the one that captures more overall considerations about the topic of circular design that go across all the different phases of the circular innovation process. So you're going to find information about the circular innovation process and the blueprint, so a lot of information that I just briefly mentioned today. The second chapter of part one is about transitions, because the circular innovation process and the blueprint captures the best practices coming from leading experts in the field. So it's unthinkable that an organization can implement all these things overnight. So we really wanted to capture also anecdotes and learnings from the experts about how did you get there, how did you transition from a linear way to a circular one. And a very interesting thing to know about this chapter is that we look at transitions at different levels, at organizational level, but also at offering level, and also at ecosystem level. And just to give you a bit of a sneak peek into what you are going to find in this document, I always like the part about the circular offering transition, because here we managed to capture very interesting, very crafty insights from different companies on how they found ways to transition their offering to circularity. Specifically, for instance, in the topic of repair and refurbishment, we heard very cool insights about how to start from B2B and then scaling up to B2C. Another interesting thing to know about transition is that we also looked into how these different transition levels interact with each other. So, for instance, how sometimes we have companies that use more a top-down approach and others a bottom-up approach. Some start from creating a very solid overall framework, and then they use it and they cascade it down to different businesses. Other companies instead used a different approach. They tried, they tested, they piloted different value propositions, they learned from that, and then they inform their top-level framework. Part two, instead, is much more operational, and it's really structured in following the circular innovation process. So here you can see the four main phases of it, and you're going to find content that is really much more pragmatic. It's really about the how to design a circular design framework, how to design for repair. So just to give you a glimpse into the document. The enabling chapter, again, is about designing those enabling conditions for a company organization-wide circular Swift. And here we looked into topics like circular governance, cultures, and data schemes. Data schemes is something that, for instance, for me was really new, because I don't work on this topic usually in my daily work. What you are going to find in the guide, and what you can also see here, is really assets that were really provided by the companies themselves. Sometimes you are going to find in this guide overviews and images and documentations that have never been released publicly before. You are also going to find things like this one. This is the amazing work that our visual team did to make sure that we would really highlight to you what are the key insights that you should really not miss in all these pages. We call these expert pieces. What we try to do as much as we could all over the guide is really to bring in the forefront the experts that helped us developing this guide. The experts are the key protagonist of this document. So for instance, you're going to find this specific expert in this specific company told us this, and this is the learnings that they captured. So for instance, here you can see an example from Accenture and AWS, and experimentations that they did on creating automated circular data lake to surface information that they used to feed their circular decision making. Frame is the section of the guide that is about creating a clear, shared, common understanding of circularity across an entire organization. And here you're going to find super cool information about how different companies approach this topic. And we really kind of compare how different companies had to adapt their framework depending on their business reality. So you're going to find, again, very hands-on information about, for instance, key documentations that you must take into account when you create a framework. But you're also going to find example of, for instance, how Schneider Electric developed their framework, how Philips developed their framework, key differences and similarities between them. Philips shared so much in this document. You're going to find documentations that they've always been using internally to drive their topic forward. For instance, their circular design framework reference. And then also companies like Danfoss. Danfoss helped us also a lot to understand how they created their framework and also how they connected it to tools to measure their impact. And you're also going to find information how, for instance, companies translated this framework in actionable KPIs. Plan is the one about creating circular value propositions through context research. Here you are going to find both topics addressed at both portfolio and product level. You're going to find very cool insights, for instance, from Fairphone, how they explain us how they take into account fairness in their value proposition. Also from Adam, from H&D, how they validated with consumers new value propositions on repair. And then finally, implement. Implement is the section that is the most extensive one because we expected that many people were really interested in understanding how to execute a new value proposition. And here we touch on many different topics, from targets and engineering requirement settings. And then we deep dive into the implementation of 3 R strategies. We decided to focus on 3 to be able to deep dive enough into each of them. And these are repair, refurbishment, and recycling. And then again, also the topic of communication and user engagement and monitoring. Is implementation happening? Is implementation happening in the right way? And also monitoring for reporting reasons. I'll briefly gonna show you a sneak peek of, for instance, repair. As you might have already noticed, we have sub-table of contents that are really going to help you to navigate through all this information. We also always put an executive summary at the beginning of each chapter so that every time you can read the sneak peek of the chapter before diving into it. And then you're always going to find a section of the blueprint that is going to show you where the content that you're going to read about is located in the circular innovation process. If we dive into the topic of repair, you see that you are going to be asked, do you want to learn about repair operations or product design for repair? If we dive into product design for repair, I just want to show you that we also went into the details of product design as well, because I talked a lot about other things as well. So here we deep dive into topics like how to design for mechanical disassembly, for instance, with insights provided also from TU Delft. example from Fairphones, and also a lot of insights from Microsoft on topics that go beyond what usually people consider under repair. Like, for instance, okay, we want to do consumer repair. How do we allow for field parts calibration? How can a user with little experience can do it? Information about diagnostics, design for diagnostic, with example also from HP and Versuni, and also example of how you can design the internals of your product to guide correct execution of repair. I know we are already running a bit over time, but I really wanted to show you some other cool things that you're going to find in this guide that hopefully are going to convince you to give it a try and to read the 600 pages. If we look into refurbishment, you're going to find very cool information, for instance, from Versuni. Versuni provided so much information. They share so much about the internal documentations that they use, for instance, how they set up their refurbishment protocols and procedures. Together with them, HP and ERI, one of the biggest e-waste recycler in the US, we really documented how a reference refurbishment process looks like. And again, all the picture and things that you see here, we didn't download from the internet. This has been really provided by the companies. This is really how their refurbishment operations look like. And finally, recycling, of course. Recycling was a topic that we approached thanks to the help of so many companies, Philips, Fazio, Microsoft. And in this chapter, you're going to find the detailed information about how to design for e-waste recycling and do's and don'ts. And we really deep dive into describing different recycling processes, also differences depending on different regions. So what about US versus Europe? And for instance, we deep dive also in the topic of how to assess recyclability. Microsoft shares so many insights about how they assess recyclability of their products and how they do it using primary data that they collected directly from recyclers in OECD countries, thanks to a collaboration with Unitar. So as you can see, you're going to find a lot in this guide, but I hope that also this level of depth is really going to help you to implement this topic in your own company. So I would like to go back to the final presentation for the final slide. Yes, clicker. So just to conclude, the guide is officially available on the CEP website, cep2030.org, completely for free. You are free to download it and to use it. Please reach out. Let us know what you think. Let us know what we got wrong, what you agree with, what you don't agree with, and also let us know if this really helped you, because like one of our colleagues mentioned recently, we are definitely really happy with the result. But to be proud of it, we really need to know that someone is actually implementing something thanks to it. Yeah, thank you. All right, so this is the closure of the live broadcast. Yeah. Thank you very much for those joining online. Check out the guide.